Just a few days ago, I made a video here on this channel, Homesteading Off the Grid, the most popular homesteading channel on the internet that has absolutely nothing to do with homesteading, about a busing situation that's affecting myself and 1,000 families in our central Virginia county. Basically, with 2 weeks left of summer break before school starts, the county informed us that we will not be receiving busing services this school year, and that we needed to make alternative arrangements to get our children to school. Mind you, again, if you missed that video, they pretty much drew a circle around the school, and if you live 15 minutes outside of that area, you have to drive your kids. And we live without traffic 30 minutes, but with traffic and congestion, it's 45 at least, 45 back. We're looking at spending 3 to 4 hours a day driving 5 days a week. So like the title says, I've got a note here, a message from a retired teacher of 35 years who is issuing an urgent, dire warning about the public school system's woke agenda. I think there is so much more to this than I first realized. I'm just going to put this out there, and you kind of read between the lines, because I don't want to make a statement that it's interesting. 15 minutes. It's as if you're further away than 15 minutes of the epicenter of the community, your services are cut off. Could they possibly want us all to live within a 15-minute radius of town center? Interesting, isn't it? Secondly, why did they only give us 2 weeks notice? This is a question that myself and probably the other 999 families affected by this have been asking. Well, I have since found out, because I've found that that's about how long it takes if you're on the fast track to transfer your child to an online virtual learning school. For example, just throwing this out there for anybody who's affected and there's a busing shortage around the country, check out K12.com. I'm not being paid by them. I'm not being sponsored by them. Just check them out. They have a free public school option where your child can actually go for free, or you can pay $6,000 a year for the international private option, which the benefit to that is you can pull up the anchor and you don't have to stay grounded. If you live in Ohio and you're not planning on leaving Ohio for the next 9 months, do the free system. But if you're, for example, our situation, we're a multicultural family. My wife's Filipina. She's from the Philippines. My son was born there. He's biracial. If we, and I'm not saying we are, I'm just saying that I have definitely looked into this. If we go with that private international option, we don't want to stick around for another cold, Virginia winter. And they're really mild here. They're not too cold. But last year it got down to 0 and the water lines froze, even though they're insulated. Houses in the South aren't made for weather that cold. But if we decide we want to go to the Philippines for the winter and have every day of summer, because it's tropical, it's summer every day there year round, we can do that. So that's a benefit of that option. And ironically, I found out it takes about 2 weeks and a day to make this transition. And then, of course, it takes longer than that if you are to get qualified to homeschool your child. So how interesting that they made sure to tell everybody this information after the window of time to make another choice had closed. It's almost as if we're going to make you people drive your kids to our school, because if we take them out, they lose funding, right? So very interesting. Let me read this to you, because I can go off on this all day long. From Mary Davis, and I've got a couple of other messages on here as well I'm going to share with you. Mary, thank you for your message. Mary says, this is coming from a retired public school teacher with 35 years experience. If you really want to make a difference, pull your son out of public school and homeschool him. Encourage others in your situation to do the same. Socialization, plan field trips with others who are homeschooling. Even get someone who can to coach a team so they can play a sport. Out of a group of 1,000 families, they should be able to divide into teams. I'm going to make a note on that here in a minute. When I was studying to become a teacher in the 1970s, I already saw where public schools were heading. I had no idea it would be this bad, but I knew if I had children, I would be a stay-at-home mom and homeschool. In addition to parents pulling their children out of school supporting the woke agenda, You will be hitting the school where it hurts, in their pocketbook. Schools receive money from the county, state, and federal government based on attendance. By transporting your child to that school and keeping them there, you are supporting the woke agenda. No matter what you say on social media to make people aware of what's going on, you are supporting the woke agenda every day you take your child to that school. Much love and blessings to you and your family. So she mentioned sports and teams. My son plays football in the fall, basketball in the winter, and spring football, and he's never played for his school. There are so many other organizations out there that provide sports opportunities with qualified coaches for your children. You don't need the school for that. So, and interestingly, out of a team of about 12 kids, my son Daniel's basketball team, football team, and it's the same kids for both teams. It's a good group of kids, been playing together for 3 or 4 years. 3 or 4 of them are actually homeschooled, and 3 or 4 of them go to private schools. And it's because of this nonsense we're talking about here, this woke agenda. And we've had some experiences. I never called. I was never the squeaky wheel. I didn't care. But I mentioned in the video I made about the busing the other day about how they would send home these questionnaires at the beginning of the year. And the first question on a lot of them was, which pronouns does your child prefer? Well, we just wouldn't send them in because we're just not playing our game. We're just ignoring it. Well, one of the social justice warrior teachers whose questionnaire we didn't send in kind of guilt-shamed my son about it last year. Here's an example. Once he and another kid were outside. It was after lunch. They get like 10 minutes before they have to go back to class. And I guess they had ventured off a little further away than they were supposed to. And she called him over. She says, hey, you guys, get back over here. So they go back over. And then when they get there, she says to my son and that kid, I'm sorry I called you guys. I hope you're not offended. I apologize if I offended you by referring to you as males. I don't know how to refer to you because your parents didn't answer my questionnaire about pronouns. Yeah, said that too. Last year my son was in 6th grade. He was 11 years old. So it's like almost as if you're gonna play our game, or we're gonna force you to play the game, or we will guilt shame your child because you didn't play our game. So there's just one example. Here's another one. This isn't about gender. This is about race. I mentioned to you he's biracial. His mom's Filipina and I'm Caucasian American. So they had these counselors come into the school, students from the University of Virginia who are training to be counselors. They got to come in and talk to some of the kids. So it was a young lady. She chose to talk to my son. First question she asked him, she says, so what's it like going to school with all these white kids? And he was like, huh? She goes, well, aren't you biracial? Aren't you half Asian? He says, well, yeah, but I'm half white too. And she saw that he wasn't going to go down that road. And she was like, oh, well, just always know that you can always go to the guidance counselor if you ever have any issues with anything. And then she went on to move on to the next kid. But it's as if she was setting him up to think, hey, you're probably being treated differently, and it's because you're different, and this is in the way in which you're different. It doesn't happen. It doesn't happen. No one has ever harassed my son for being biracial, for being half Asian. None of that. None of it. And we have friends that are Asian. We have friends that are black. We have friends that are white. Okay, we have friends. It runs the gamut. No one has ever harassed him because of that. But here is a counselor in training brought in from the school to ask him, what's it like going to school with all these white kids? It's insane. Okay, so let's get on to another one from Vicki Adams. This is interesting. This is very interesting. Drinking ginger ale. She says, Vicki Adams says, you're at a certain income level in property acquisition. They know it. This is being done to irritate you and make life hard for you. This isn't about equity. It's about breaking your spirit and pockets. It's about causing division. The people in the county who are supposedly underprivileged didn't ask you guys to make this sacrifice. It's the sellouts in an office on the school board in your school district making those policies. It's not your neighbors. You guys know what the goal is. It won't be fixed until people get fed up. Bingo. Bingo, Vicky. I honestly think they want us to be a little bit upset with maybe the people who do live closer to school, maybe some of the people who do live in public housing, whose children are being provided with transportation. I'm not. Hey, and my heart goes out to those folks. I hope they come into better circumstances. I have never hated the poor, and I have never envied the rich. Okay? People are people. Money, whatever. Now, we need it. And yeah, I know it makes the world go round. But she points out something very interesting about our income level and property acquisition abilities. I think she's spot on. Because when I called the school back and I talked to the second person I talked to that day, and I mentioned this in the video, I told her, because she said to me, she says, the only way I could see you guys really being able, one of the options that you guys could do to deal with this would be to rent an apartment in town and live in town, or you can drive. Those are your only two options. And I said, yeah, I get that. And I said, let me tell you what, I will lose out on so much revenue. I know what my time's worth. I'm not going to tell you. It's private matter. But most of you probably wouldn't watch my shows anymore here on YouTube or on Sick Twisted Humor, because you would think I shouldn't be making that kind of money doing what I do. But there's so much to what I do that you do not see. It's a huge number. If I were to break down what I make per hour, it would blow your mind. And now they want 20 hours of my time for a service that I pay taxes for them to provide. Would it crush us financially? No. We would still be better off than most. And I'm grateful for where we are, and I understand all this. But it would cost us more money in revenues than, oh, geez. Okay, we're talking about teachers. You could put 4 or 5 of them together, combine their incomes. We would lose more money than that. Now, we'd still be making considerably more than that, but it would literally cost us. And so it's interesting how she points this out. It's like, I explained this to my wife, we're at the brink to where we're getting ready to enter a socioeconomic class that pretty much is free. I mean, you can come and go as you please and do what you want. Ironically, the system is trying to figure out how to hamstring folks. And it's not just me. I'm not sitting here bragging, being all big-headed. I don't mean to come across that way. This is just a real issue, so I'm being real out here as I talk about it. I know a lot of the other folks out here in this situation are in the exact same boat as me. A lot of them aren't. Some of them got a letter the other day, an email from a neighbor up the road, and I did take her books, by the way. She's got to start working part-time instead of full-time. Her husband works full-time. But she's got to only work 20 hours a week now instead of 40 to drive her little girl to middle school. So they've got to stop helping their son, who's a student over at JMU, paying his tuition and helping him with college. So now he's got to start taking student loan debts. That's how far this ripple effect is going from taking the bus away from these people. It's putting her already 20-year-old son, who's already through with this public school nonsense, into debt. Because mom and dad can't help him as much now because they have to cut their income, because they have to cut their time they have to work to drive because their buses were taken away from them. Interesting. Isn't this interesting? All right, let's get to another one from Rise Up Unafraid 4614. Man, who would name their kids some of these names? All right. They say, I worked in the school system for almost 15 years. They considered me an administrator, although I was a counselor. So what I can tell you is that all that school systems care about is money. P.S. You can get transportation if you wish. Unfortunately, it will be messy, and that's how the game is played. Needless to say, I'm no longer in the system and not sure I could ever stomach going back. Oh yeah, the squeaky wheel gets the oil. You gripe and complain enough and they'll get a bus, right? It's whatever. Now I'm going to read one from Devin Sprague. And if memory serves correctly, Devin lives in Pittsburgh because Devin bought some of my homemade Halloween decorations last year. By the way, our Etsy store is back open. The link is in the description box below. You can buy autographed copies of my books at the Etsy store. And of course, you can get them on Amazon in print or Kindle. That link's in there too. But I make these really neat Halloween. They're like wooden block things about this size. They come in sets of 4. One's a ghost face. One is a Frankenstein, one's a jack-o'-lantern, and one's a vampire. Devin bought a set of those last year. Thanks, Devin. I hope you like your decorations. Devin writes, my fiance and I were just talking about this new world. We are both young Gen Xers and consider ourselves incredibly aware and supportive, but not woke, that there are those who may identify as something other than what they are biologically. However, I feel that children are being forced to choose pronouns before their bodies or minds even know themselves. Can't they just be kids? Figure it out along the way? The important thing is when or if they have questions, they have a good support system at home and school. My nephew's 9-year-old friends are treating this like a fad, like you have to choose something even if it isn't what you truly feel. I feel like some of the woke community is turning into bullies themselves. If that's the case, we are in for a nightmare. I digress. I do agree 100% with you, Kevin. A person should not have to be forced into equity just because they are privileged. They use quotes here with privileged. I know more people who busted their butts, my fiance and I included, to get to where they are with no help from strangers, starting with nothing. Hey, I can relate. I'm one of those people, and my wife is too. We will have no problem helping those less fortunate, but getting forced to do so is not okay. Well, can you tell that to the IRS? So, no, whatever. I was going to say I don't mind paying taxes because we get good schools, buses, roads, and bridges, but gee, minus the buses now. And what's next if we don't live within 15 minutes of the epicenter of a community? So anyway, I wanted to share that information with you. I appreciate the comments. We've gotten far more than 1,000 of them. That video's gotten almost 200,000 views now. Keep pushing it, folks. If you haven't seen it, I'm going to try to link it to the end of this one. I always say that and I forget. It's old timer's disease or something. The thing about getting old, it's not that you necessarily lose your memory. It's just you got so much more to remember. One of the beauties of aging is that you get to the point to where you kind of know everything. The problem is you're just too old to remember all the stuff you know. So anyway, that's it for today, folks. Thanks for being here at Homesteading Off the Grid, the most popular homesteading channel on the entire internet that has nothing to do with homesteading. Make sure to go check us out over on Facebook at Sick Twisted Humor. And my wife does run a Homesteading Off the Grid page on Facebook. So go and visit her channel, Life with Dearly, here on YouTube. Give her some likes and watch some of her videos. She's a little cutie. She was out there picking peaches today from one of her friends. She looks so adorable. Go watch that video. I might stick that on the end of this one too, if I can remember. All right. See y'all for more next time.